Welcome to Heartfelt Revenge Stories. My name is Victoria. I am 32 years old, and that evening, that terrible evening, I discovered that my own flesh and blood were plotting my absolute destruction. I pressed my trembling body against the cold wall of that dark hallway, my shaking hand gripping the phone that was silently recording every single venomous word. The sound of my sister's malicious giggling, oh God, that giggling, it drifted through the crack of the living room door, immediately followed by my mother's enthusiastic approval. I heard my sister whisper smugly, "As long as everyone believes it, that's enough, right, Mom?" Without a moment's hesitation, my mother replied, and I swear my heart stopped. "Don't worry, sweetheart. No one ever questions a scandal like this." Please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end. Let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled, because what I'm about to tell you, it changed everything. They were busy finalizing the last cruel details of a plan designed to humiliate me in front of everyone I cared about at the Christmas party taking place that weekend. My heart felt like it was being crushed, absolutely crushed by an invisible hand when I heard the cruelest sentence a mother could ever say to confirm her betrayal. I listened closely as her sharp, cutting words sliced through the silence, declaring that after tonight, my fiancé Marcus would belong to my sister, while I would be nothing more than a despised cheater. That single sentence, it killed the last remaining shred of affection I still held for the people inside that room. Instead of breaking down in tears or bursting in to scream at them like they probably expected, I felt this terrifying sense of calm wash over me. I stopped the recording and typed a short message to my only ally, telling them that the plan was officially in motion. I turned my back on the people who were supposed to love me and walked away, my eyes colder than the coming winter storm. Because they wanted a show? They were gonna get a masterpiece. If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal from those closest to you, please share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button right now, because you are not going to believe how I turned their trap against them. The origin of this betrayal began 2 weeks before the nightmare truly unfolded. My fiancé Marcus secretly handed me a small crimson velvet box during a private dinner. With such a serious expression, he explained that the diamond ring inside was an incredibly precious family heirloom and that its announcement needed to be made formally in front of his relatives. Marcus instructed me to keep the ring completely hidden until the official engagement party, because he wanted the moment of revelation to be absolutely perfect, especially for his traditional mother. Understanding the weight of his request, I carefully hid the velvet box deep beneath a thick stack of winter sweaters in the bottom drawer of the antique wardrobe in my bedroom. I truly believed, how naive I was, I truly believed my personal space was secure enough to protect something so valuable, but I had severely underestimated the lack of boundaries within my own family. My sister Natalie has always had this terrible, invasive habit of going through my privacy, taking my clothes or expensive accessories without ever asking for permission. She waited until she saw my car leave the driveway for work before quietly slipping into my room with the intention of rummaging through my latest purchases. Natalie felt entitled to my belongings, constantly insisting that only she was suited to luxury designer items and a lavish lifestyle. Despite lacking the financial means to afford such a life and consistently refusing to commit to any steady job, she spent nearly 20 minutes tearing through my closet and drawers, growing increasingly irritated when she couldn't find a new designer handbag to borrow for her night out. Her invasive search was finally interrupted when her greedy fingers brushed against the hard edge of the velvet box hidden beneath layers of sweaters. Instead of respecting the obvious attempt to concealment and putting the item back, instead of doing the right thing, Natalie immediately pulled the box into the light with eager curiosity. She opened the lid to reveal the vintage diamond ring, and I later saw her eyes widen on camera as she realized the immense financial and sentimental value of what I had been hiding. The appropriate reaction would have been to close the box and leave the room, but Natalie has never been someone who follows moral boundaries. She slid the heavy ring on her own finger and discovered that it fit perfectly. A cold, satisfied smile spread across her face as she admired her reflection in my vanity mirror. A dark and consuming wave of envy washed over her because she genuinely believed the stunning piece of jewelry looked far better on her hand than it ever would on mine. She stood there for a long time, convincing herself that she was the one who possessed the charm and beauty necessary to become the wife of a rich businessman like Marcus. She stared at her reflection and told herself that I was too dull and rigid to satisfy a man of his stature for the rest of his life. The jealousy that had simmered for years finally boiled over, twisting into this warped justification for theft and sabotage. Gazing at the sparkling diamond, Natalie decided in that moment that she would not return the empty velvet box to its hiding place, but would keep it for herself as the first step in taking over my entire life. Her distorted reasoning told her that if I lost such an important family heirloom before the party, Marcus would see me as careless and unworthy of his family's trust. She calculated that the resulting scandal would destroy my relationship, leaving the perfect opportunity for her to step in and comfort him with feigned sympathy. Natalie carefully placed the empty velvet box back under the sweaters to ensure I wouldn't discover the theft until it was far too late to fix anything. She left my room with the ring safely tucked into her pocket, fully committing herself to a path of destruction that would ruin her own sister simply to satisfy her greed. But what Natalie didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had eyes everywhere, and when I discovered what she'd done, the evidence I found would make your blood run cold. Stay with me, because this is where everything starts to unravel. 3 days after the ring mysteriously disappeared from the drawer where I had hidden it, I finally noticed the empty space where the velvet box should have been beneath the thick stack of winter sweaters. I didn't immediately scream or run downstairs to accuse anyone, because I knew that without concrete evidence, they would only make me doubt myself and believe that I had somehow misplaced it. I forced myself to take a deep breath and remembered the small security camera I had discreetly installed on the bookshelf facing my bed months earlier. I sat down at my desk with trembling hands and accessed the footage from the cloud, praying, oh God, I was praying that my suspicions were nothing more than paranoia. The silence in the room grew heavy and suffocating as the file loaded on my laptop screen, revealing exactly what I had feared. I was frozen in complete shock when the high-definition video clearly showed my mother, Patricia, and Natalie sitting comfortably on my duvet as if the room belonged to them. The footage showed them completely at ease in my private space, discussing the future of my relationship with this chilling coldness. I watched in absolute horror as Natalie leaned forward, her eyes sharp and predatory, and began poisoning my mother's mind with lies about my professional achievements. She wasn't satisfied with just stealing the ring. No. She wanted to destroy every aspect of the life I had worked so hard to build. Natalie spun this vile story, claiming that my recent promotion wasn't earned through hard work or those long, exhausting hours. She looked my mother straight in the eye and fabricated an affair between me and my superior, insisting I had gained an unfair advantage. Natalie's voice in the recording turned venomous, making my stomach twist in the most horrible way. Do you honestly think she's smart enough to get that job? Haha, she slept with that old director just to climb into the manager's seat. Can you imagine hearing your own sister say that about you? Drop a comment if you've ever been betrayed by family. I need to know I'm not alone in this. I had expected my mother to defend me, or at least question such a vulgar and baseless accusation against her own daughter. Instead, this broke me. Patricia simply nodded in agreement, as if it confirmed something she had wanted to believe all along. She seemed relieved to finally have a reason to diminish my success so it wouldn't outshine her favorite child. Patricia looked at Natalie with this serious expression and replied without hesitation, "You're right. Marcus's family is so prestigious. We can't allow a promiscuous daughter-in-law to tarnish their reputation." My heart shattered into a million pieces as I realized they weren't just gossiping, they were actively conspiring to destroy my engagement. The next 20 minutes of footage showed them meticulously planning how to manufacture evidence to support their twisted version of reality. I listened, tears streaming down my face, as they discussed using a fake phone number to create a trail of incriminating text messages, making it appear as though I was communicating with a lover. They even talked about editing photos to place me in compromising situations that had never happened. The level of detail in their plan proved they had been thinking about ruining me for a long, long time. They decided the perfect moment to detonate this bomb would be at the upcoming Christmas party, when all of Marcus's relatives and business partners would be present to witness my humiliation. Natalie smiled maliciously at the camera and delivered the final blow that made me want to scream. "Tonight, I'll show everyone her true face, so Marcus will finally realize who truly deserves him." I sat in the dim light of my bedroom, letting the video loop over and over as a cold numbness spread through my veins. They were planning to paint me as a cheater and a fraud in front of the man I loved, just to steal him away from me. This betrayal went beyond a stolen piece of jewelry. They were trying to steal my dignity, my future, my entire life. I realized that crying over this treachery would solve nothing, and that if I wanted to survive, I had to be smarter than they were. I saved the video file in 3 separate secure locations because this recording was no longer just a heartbreaking discovery. Oh no, it was a weapon. They wanted to publicly execute my character, but they had no idea they had just handed me the gun. 1 week before the extravagant Christmas party was scheduled to take place at the family estate, I knew that I could not fight this battle alone against my own mother and sister. I carefully copied the incriminating video file from my laptop onto a secure USB drive to ensure that the original evidence remained safe from any digital tampering or sudden deletion. I drove straight to the residence of Aunt Helen, who is my father's younger sister, and arguably the most powerful and fair-minded woman in our entire extended family lineage. Helen has always held a position of immense respect within Charleston society because she values integrity and honor above all else, making her the only person who could possibly validate my story against my mother's manipulations. I walked into her study with the weight of the world on my shoulders, knowing that if she did not believe me, I would be completely isolated in the coming storm. I sat down opposite her and plugged the drive into her computer, my hands shaking slightly as I prepared to expose the ugliness that had festered within our family for so long. I needed her to see the truth with her own eyes before the rumors started to spread. So I took a deep breath to steady my nerves before pushing the laptop toward her. I placed the silver USB drive on the polished mahogany table and spoke with a voice that was thick with suppressed emotion. "Aunt Helen, I need you to watch this footage because this is exactly how my mother and sister treat me when no one else is looking." The silence in the room grew heavy and suffocating as the file loaded on my laptop screen, revealing exactly what I had feared. I was frozen in complete shock when the high-definition video clearly showed my mother, Patricia, and Natalie sitting comfortably on my duvet as if the room belonged to them. The footage showed them completely at ease in my private space, discussing the future of my relationship with this chilling coldness. I watched in absolute horror as Natalie leaned forward, her eyes sharp and predatory, and began poisoning my mother's mind with lies about my professional achievements. She wasn't satisfied with just stealing the ring. No, no, no. She wanted to destroy every aspect of the life I had worked so hard to build. Natalie spun this vile story, claiming that my recent promotion wasn't earned through hard work or those long, exhausting hours. She looked my mother straight in the eye and fabricated an affair between me and my superior, insisting I had gained an unfair advantage. Natalie's voice in the recording turned venomous, making my stomach twist in the most horrible way. Do you honestly think she's smart enough to get that job? Haha, she slept with that old director just to climb into the manager's seat. Can you imagine hearing your own sister say that about you? Drop a comment if you've ever been betrayed by family. I need to know I'm not alone in this. I had expected my mother to defend me, or at least question such a vulgar and baseless accusation against her own daughter. Instead, this broke me. Patricia simply nodded in agreement, as if it confirmed something she had wanted to believe all along. She seemed relieved to finally have a reason to diminish my success so it wouldn't outshine her favorite child. Patricia looked at Natalie with this serious expression and replied without hesitation, "You're right. Marcus's family is so prestigious. We can't allow a promiscuous daughter-in-law to tarnish their reputation." My heart shattered into a million pieces as I realized they weren't just gossiping, they were actively conspiring to destroy my engagement. The next 20 minutes of footage showed them meticulously planning how to manufacture evidence to support their twisted version of reality. I listened, tears streaming down my face, as they discussed using a fake phone number to create a trail of incriminating text messages, making it appear as though I was communicating with a lover. They even talked about editing photos to place me in compromising situations that had never happened. The level of detail in their plan proved they had been thinking about ruining me for a long, long time. They decided the perfect moment to detonate this bomb would be at the upcoming Christmas party, when all of Marcus's relatives and business partners would be present to witness my humiliation. Natalie smiled maliciously at the camera and delivered the final blow that made me want to scream. Tonight, I'll show everyone her true face, so Marcus will finally realize who truly deserves him. I sat in the dim light of my bedroom, letting the video loop over and over as a cold numbness spread through my veins. They were planning to paint me as a cheater and a fraud in front of the man I loved just to steal him away from me. This betrayal went beyond a stolen piece of jewelry. They were trying to steal my dignity, my future, my entire life. I realized that crying over this treachery would solve nothing, and that if I wanted to survive, I had to be smarter than they were. I saved the video file in 3 separate secure locations because this recording was no longer just a heartbreaking discovery. Oh no, it was a weapon. They wanted to publicly execute my character, but they had no idea they had just handed me the gun. We spent the next hour formulating a detailed counterattack that would turn their own trap against them in the most public way possible. Helen took charge of the guest list strategy, promising to ensure that the most influential figures in Charleston society would attend the party to serve as credible witnesses to the truth. She wanted to make sure that once the evidence was revealed, no amount of lying or spinning from my mother could ever repair their shattered reputation in this town. My role in our alliance was to handle the technical aspects of the reveal, using my professional skills as an event manager to hijack the presentation. I knew that Natalie was technologically illiterate and would rely entirely on the preset system without checking the files herself. I planned to slip into the control room to swap her file containing the fake evidence with the video from my bedroom, ensuring that her moment of triumph would instantly turn into her worst nightmare. I realized that this plan required perfect timing because any hesitation would give them a chance to cut the power before the truth was fully exposed. Have you ever had to plan the perfect revenge? Let me know in the comments what you would have done in my situation. We also discussed whether or not I should warn Marcus about what was going to happen, but I made the difficult decision to keep him completely in the dark until the very last moment. I reasoned that if Marcus knew about the plot beforehand, his reaction during the party might look staged or controlled, which could give Natalie an opening to claim he was biased. I needed his shock, anger, and disgust to be raw and authentic, so that everyone in the room would know without a doubt that he was not involved in their scheme. It was a dangerous gamble to let the man I love walk into an ambush, but I knew it was the only way to permanently sever the ties with my toxic family. The meeting concluded with a solemn pact between us, and for the first time in weeks, I felt this glimmer of hope that justice might actually be served. Helen stood up and walked around the desk to look me in the eye, offering the validation I had desperately craved from a maternal figure for my entire life. She reached across the table to firmly grasp my trembling hands while her eyes burned with fierce determination. "Do not worry, Victoria, because I will help you turn this party into a grave that will bury their greed forever." That afternoon, the atmosphere in the mansion became strangely stifling as the gray clouds outside signaled an approaching winter storm that mirrored the tension building within the walls. The delicate balance of the household was thrown into immediate chaos when Marcus arrived at the estate much earlier than we had anticipated, accompanied by Mrs. Sinclair, his mother, who was a woman known throughout Charleston for her rigid adherence to traditional values and family honor. Her unexpected early arrival caused Patricia to spiral into a state of visible panic because she knew that Mrs. Sinclair was an incredibly difficult woman to please and would judge every single detail of the evening with a critical eye. I watched from the corner of the room as my mother frantically ordered the staff to polish silver that was already gleaming, desperate to create a facade of perfection for the matriarch of the wealthy family she so desperately wanted to impress. Natalie saw Marcus's arrival not as a cause for alarm, but as a golden opportunity to begin her seduction before the party officially began. She had chosen to wear this daringly cut crimson dress that was far too revealing for a family Christmas gathering, clearly intending to draw every eye in the room toward her figure. Natalie spent the entire afternoon hovering around Marcus like a moth drawn to a flame, completely ignoring my presence while she invaded his personal space with a series of suggestive gestures. She laughed too loudly, ha ha ha, it was so fake, at his polite comments, and constantly touched his arm in a way that was meant to signal intimacy to anyone watching, especially his mother. I could see Marcus shifting uncomfortably as he tried to maintain a polite distance, but Natalie was relentless in her pursuit because she believed she had already won the game. She deliberately leaned her body toward him while holding a glass of wine and spoke in a voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Marcus, you look so exhausted from all your hard work. Surely you need a woman who understands how to share your burden instead of someone who only knows how to bury herself in her career, like a certain person we know." While Natalie worked on Marcus, Patricia was busy executing the social aspect of their plan by ingratiating herself with Mrs. Sinclair. My mother followed the older woman around the living room, nodding enthusiastically at every critique Mrs. Sinclair made about the decor or the catering. Patricia was playing a dangerous double game because while she was charming Marcus's mother, she was also discreetly whispering to the early VIP guests about a scandalous secret that was about to be revealed regarding my character. She wanted to plant the seeds of doubt in their minds so that when the fake evidence was shown later, the audience would already be primed to believe the worst about me. Patricia turned to Mrs. Sinclair with this practiced look of solemnity and delivered a line that made my stomach churn with its hypocrisy. Please rest assured, Mrs. Sinclair, because tonight our family will demonstrate that honesty is our core value, even if revealing the truth turns out to be incredibly painful for us. I decided that the best way to facilitate their downfall was to make myself as invisible as possible. In these final hours of preparation, I played the role of the submissive and defeated daughter perfectly, keeping my head down while I pretended to check the audio cables and lighting connections in the corner of the ballroom. My passivity made them arrogant, and they barely spared me a glance as they assumed I was merely doing the grunt work to ensure their moment of glory went smoothly. But I was actually securing the connection between the projector and my laptop to ensure that nothing could interrupt the video feed once I initiated the sequence. The tension in the room nearly reached a breaking point during a brief interaction between Natalie and Helen near the entrance of the ballroom. Natalie was strutting through the room with such blind confidence that she clumsily collided with Helen, nearly dropping her expensive clutch purse onto the marble floor. The bag swung open for a split second, and I saw Natalie's face turn pale with panic as she realized the stolen crimson velvet box was sitting right at the top of her belongings. She snapped the purse shut with aggressive speed before Helen could look down, terrified that her theft would be discovered before she could frame me. However, instead of showing remorse or fear, she quickly recovered her composure and glared at me across the room as if the near miss was somehow my fault. She brushed past me on her way to refresh her drink and leaned in to whisper a final venomous taunt into my ear. Enjoy these fleeting moments of being Marcus's fiancé, because it's all going to end tonight, you idiot. Little did she know that in just a few minutes, her entire world was about to come crashing down. The moment the lights dimmed and the presentation began, everything they had planned would backfire in the most spectacular way. You won't want to miss what happens next. When the sound of clinking glasses signaled the official start of the party, the murmurs of the elite guests gradually faded away, giving way to an expectant silence. As every gaze turned toward the center of the room where the lights burned brightly, Patricia stepped into the glow with the composed poise of an actress, gripping the microphone as though it were the last fragment of her remaining dignity. She scanned the sea of faces with this carefully rehearsed expression of sorrow, crafted to draw sympathy from every mother in the room. Tears shimmered in her eyes as she prepared for the performance of a lifetime, one she believed would both destroy my reputation and elevate her favored daughter into the role of a tragic victim. Patricia took a trembling breath before speaking deliberately, locking eyes with Mrs. Sinclair, who sat in the front row with a stern expression that demanded absolute perfection. Patricia raised the microphone to her lips and spoke in a shaking voice that echoed through the grand hall. I apologize to you, Mrs. Sinclair, and to you as well, Marcus, but I cannot allow this deception to continue in my family for another moment. She continued by lamenting her failure as a mother for raising a daughter who had lost her way, painting a vivid picture of my alleged moral corruption without yet naming the specific sins. Natalie stood beside the projector laptop with this triumphant smirk etched across her face, convinced that she was mere seconds away from securing her future as a millionaire's wife. She shot me a look filled with pure malice before letting her finger hover over the enter key, which she believed would display the fabricated text messages and photos of my supposed affair. This is the moment, guys. This is where everything changes. Keep watching because you're about to witness the most satisfying moment of my entire life. Natalie pressed the button with aggressive confidence, fully expecting the screen behind them to light up with evidence that would force Marcus to abandon me on the spot. The massive screen flickered briefly before illuminating the entire ballroom, but instead of the doctored images they had prepared, a high-definition video of my bedroom appeared in crystal clear detail. The confused whispers of the crowd died instantly as they realized they were witnessing a private conversation between the hostess and her daughter. Patricia and Natalie froze on stage as the image of them sitting on my bed filled the wall behind them, their relaxed posture in the video standing in sharp contrast to the terror now gripping them. The audio from the hidden camera thundered through the high-quality speakers, broadcasting their conspiracy to every corner of the room with chilling clarity. The audience watched in stunned silence as the video version of Natalie leaned forward and proposed the vile plan to frame me for sleeping with my boss. The most damning moment followed when the footage cut to Natalie rummaging through my wardrobe like a common thief. The camera zoomed in on her face as she discovered the crimson velvet box, capturing the grotesque transformation of her expression from curiosity to raw greed. In the video, she slid the diamond ring onto her finger and admired it under the light, laughing with manic delight that caused the guests in the ballroom to gasp in collective horror. Then, the audio delivered the final nail in their coffin as Natalie's voice rang out with unmistakable clarity. "Just get rid of Victoria. I'll take Marcus and his fortune will be ours." The impact of that sentence was immediate and catastrophic, shattering whatever credibility my mother and sister had attempted to build throughout the evening. Marcus stared at the screen with absolute revulsion, as though he were watching a monster shed its human skin to reveal the ugliness beneath. He turned to look at the real Natalie standing on stage, regarding her like a creature he could not possibly comprehend. Mrs. Sinclair, who had remained seated in rigid silence until that moment, suddenly rose from her chair with such force that it toppled backward onto the floor. Her face flushed a deep crimson with a mixture of second-hand humiliation and uncontrollable fury at the deception unfolding before her eyes. As a woman who valued honor above all else, seeing her son reduced to nothing more than a financial target was an insult she could not tolerate. She looked up at the stage where Patricia stood trembling in fear and unleashed her rage in a voice that thundered over the whispers of the crowd. "Turn off that disgusting video immediately and explain to me exactly what the hell is going on here." 10 minutes after the chaos, when the video ended and the screen slowly faded to black, the room that had been meant to host a Christmas celebration transformed into an improvised courtroom where Charleston's social elite became both judge and jury. The stunned silence that initially blanketed the space was quickly replaced by this palpable tension as the guests began to grasp the full magnitude of the betrayal they had just witnessed. Mrs. Sinclair did not wait for any explanation because the evidence was already undeniable, and she strode forward with terrifying purpose, causing the crowd to instinctively part before her like the Red Sea. She stopped directly in front of Natalie, who was trembling in her red dress like a leaf trapped in a violent storm, unable to form a single coherent word in her own defense. Mrs. Sinclair raised her hand and struck Natalie across the face, the sharp sound echoing through the silent hall like thunder, officially signaling the end of Natalie's social standing. The force of the slap sent Natalie stumbling backward, her hand clutching her burning cheek as she stared up at the matriarch in absolute disbelief at how catastrophically her plan had failed. Mrs. Sinclair looked down at her with pure contempt, no longer seeing a potential daughter-in-law, but something filthy clinging to the sole of her shoe. She pointed a perfectly manicured finger at Natalie's face and delivered a verdict that would haunt my sister for the rest of her life in this town. Mrs. Sinclair spoke in a voice as sharp as a blade slicing through the air. "You shameless creature, someone of such low character does not deserve to step foot inside my home, not even if you were hired as a gardener." But the humiliation didn't stop there. Marcus had something to say, and what he did next? Oh, it was beautiful. The justice was only beginning, and I was here for every single second of it. Marcus stepped forward immediately after his mother, his face stripped of every trace of the warmth I once knew, replaced by a cold fury aimed squarely at the woman who had tried to steal his future. He did not raise his voice, yet his presence alone was enough to make Natalie shrink back as he extended his hand toward her designer clutch. He ordered her to open the bag at once, and when her shaking fingers fumbled with the clasp, Marcus seized it from her grasp to reclaim what belonged to him. He pulled the crimson velvet box from the depths of her purse, opened it briefly to confirm that the diamond ring was safe, then snapped it shut with a finality that echoed throughout the room. Marcus stared at Natalie without a shred of pity, only a deep and abiding disgust for the greed she had displayed. He tightened his grip on the ring box and delivered his final warning in a tone that froze the blood in her veins. "Do not ever let me see your face anywhere near my life or Victoria's again." Their reputations collapsed in real time as the most powerful figures in Charleston silently turned their backs on my mother and sister. I watched longtime business partners glance down at their phones to cancel deals, while socialites who once drank Patricia's champagne now regarded her with open contempt. Patricia tried to grab the arm of a wealthy investor to insist that everything was a misunderstanding, but he shook her off as though her touch were contagious and walked straight toward the exit. The realization that she had become a social outcast slowly set in, and Patricia scanned the room with wild, desperate eyes, searching for anyone still willing to acknowledge her existence. I knew this was my moment to sever the final tether binding me to this toxic cycle of abuse and manipulation. I slowly unclasped the thin silver bracelet my mother had given me on my 18th birthday, the only gift she had ever given me that was not an insult. The metal felt cold against my skin, much like the relationship I had endured for 32 years, and removing it felt like shedding a heavy shackle. I walked over to the table where Patricia stood amid the ruins of her ambition and gently placed the bracelet on the white tablecloth. I looked straight into the tear-filled eyes of the woman who gave birth to me and spoke my final words. "You wanted honor. Now the entire city knows exactly how much your honor is worth." I did not wait for her response, because there was nothing left that could repair what she had destroyed. I turned away from the sobbing figures of my mother and sister, reached for Marcus's hand on one side and Aunt Helen's arm on the other, and together we walked toward the grand double doors of the mansion, united as we left the darkness behind. Patricia's wailing grew louder as the reality of her isolation fully settled in, but I did not look back even once. I stepped into the cool Charleston night, leaving the rotting splendor of the estate behind, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely and utterly free. Tell me in the comments, would you have done the same thing? And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life, because we all deserve to be free from toxic people. 6 months have passed since that fateful night when the truth was revealed on the screen at the ceremony, and my life has changed in a way so beautiful that I can barely recognize it myself. I officially married Marcus in a private and deeply intimate ceremony in the rolling hills of Tuscany, Italy, far removed from the toxic whispers of Charleston's social elite. We exchanged our vows beneath the golden afternoon sun with only our closest friends and Aunt Helen in attendance, ensuring that our special day was defined by genuine love rather than hollow social obligations. The peace I feel now, it's indescribable, is further amplified by my professional success, as I have finally opened my own event planning company, which has quickly become one of the most sought-after agencies in the city. I no longer have to hide my talents or fear my mother taking credit for my hard work, because every achievement I reach now belongs entirely to me. The fate of those who tried to destroy me has been far less kind, serving as a harsh reminder that actions inevitably carry consequences. Natalie is now facing a major lawsuit for defamation and theft, as Mrs. Sinclair refused to let the insult to her family go unpunished. My sister was forced to sell off her designer wardrobe and now works as a waitress at a small diner on the outskirts of town just to keep up with her growing legal debts. She has been permanently blacklisted from every high society event in Charleston, and the very people she once tried to impress now refuse to even meet her eyes if she happens to serve their table. Being forced to pour coffee for the women she once mocked has humbled her in a way no amount of scolding ever could. Sometimes karma has the most poetic sense of humor. My father finally woke up to the reality of the woman he had been living with for decades and made the decision to formally separate from Patricia shortly after the party scandal broke. He moved into a quiet apartment in the city to reclaim his peace, leaving Patricia completely alone in the sprawling family estate she once treasured above all else. She now lives a solitary existence in that massive, cold house, as relatives have cut off all contact to avoid being associated with her disgrace. The family fortune she was so desperate to protect has been drained by legal fees and the loss of business partners, leaving her surrounded by expensive furniture but without enough money to pay the heating bills. Yesterday afternoon, while I was reviewing contracts for an upcoming charity gala, my phone buzzed with a notification from an unfamiliar number. I opened the message to find a long, rambling wall of text from Patricia, who had obtained a burner phone after I blocked her main number months ago. She began with tearful pleas for forgiveness, claiming she missed her daughter and wanted to mend our broken family. However, as I scrolled to the bottom of the message, her true motive revealed itself in a request for financial assistance to help her keep the house. She was not sorry for what she had done to me, only sorry that her actions had cost her the comfortable lifestyle she felt entitled to. I stared at the screen for a long moment, feeling nothing but a distant sense of pity for a woman who still did not understand the meaning of love. I did not type a reply because I knew that any response would only give her another chance to manipulate me. I pressed the block button without a second of hesitation and deleted the message thread, effectively erasing her final attempt to pull me back into her darkness. The wedding in Italy truly was the happiest day of my life because it marked the beginning of a future in which I am valued for who I am. Marcus and I spent 2 weeks traveling through vineyards, celebrating our freedom from the drama that had haunted us for so long. When we returned home, the launch of my company was met with overwhelming support from the community, proving that integrity is worth more than any inheritance. My clients value my transparency and dedication, qualities I fought hard to preserve despite the environment in which I was raised. As for Natalie, her fall of grace has become a cautionary tale whispered about in the country clubs she can no longer enter. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that she attempted to attend a public charity event last month, only to be quietly escorted out by security before she even reached the bar. The image of her being removed from the world she once longed to dominate stands in contrast to the arrogance she displayed on that stage. She is learning the hard way that character is the only currency that matters when money runs out. Patricia's isolation may be the most fitting punishment of all, because she spent her entire life caring more about public perception than human connection. Now that public opinion has turned against her, she has nothing left to cling to except the echoes of her own poor choices. She wanders through the empty halls of a mansion that now stands as a monument to her greed, likely wondering where everything went wrong without ever looking in the mirror. And me? I wake up every morning next to a man who loves me for exactly who I am. I run a business that brings joy to people's lives. I have the respect of a community that knows my true character. And most importantly, I am finally, completely, beautifully free. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this. Never let anyone, not even family, make you feel like you don't deserve the life you've built. Stand your ground, protect your peace, and when they try to tear you down, rise up and show them exactly who they're dealing with. Thank you for listening to my story. Please subscribe, hit that like button and share this with anyone who needs to hear that they can overcome betrayal and come out stronger on the other side. You are not alone. You are worthy, and you deserve every bit of happiness that comes your way. This is Victoria signing off. Until next time, stay strong and keep fighting for the life you deserve.